Hey everybody, welcome back to Hook. This week we are going to talk about some of the best kayaks for bigger water fishing, like offshore fishing. This will be your bigger lakes fishing. And originally we kind of set out with the idea we were going to talk about specific kayaks, but we might actually hone in on some of the best attributes to pay attention to. So let's get into it. Hey Travis, how's it going, man?
Good, good, good.
All right. So when we originally set out, I kind of gave you the task of saying, hey, pick your favorite ones. But you kind of mentioned before we even hopped in here that, we could list off a bunch of kayaks that we think are great, and someone's going to give us flack right away and be like, hey, I take this kayak out and I do just fine on offshore. So maybe we shift our focus a little bit and actually hone in on maybe some of the questions people ask us when they're talking about what would be a good kayak for big water or offshore fishing. And we can just talk about some of the attributes maybe you should be looking at instead of an actual kayak specifically.
For sure. I definitely think that's the route to go. I think that, there's going to be guys that this is going to be very equal to other bodies of water that we talk about, with safety, with performance, with all of that. And I think that there are going to be guys that skill level gives them the ability to take whatever they want. And I think that we just need to be cognizant of that and make sure that, we're not saying you can't take, a Hobie passport. If your skill level gives you the ability to do that, then it just opens up the doors to many more kayaks. But I think what we're going to really focus on is, kayaks that perform better and have that in mind in manufacturing.
Yeah. So let's just start right off. I think the number one thing people are going to be asking about and what is a focus no matter where you go is stability. So, what are we looking for stability on bigger water? Because it's going to be different than what the stability is on a little pond jumper type of fishing kayak. You're going to need a little bit more.
Absolutely, and I think that you need to look at the bodies of water that you're doing, of course, with how rough the water is, the waves, whether there's current, all of that. Um, but yeah, I think that there are some kayaks that really shine on stability. That's going to be the new canoe UMax, the Unlimited also would still be a good kayak. Some of those that their primary stability is really good. I think is something that you will need more. When you're in moving water, like a river or something with some pretty heavy current, that primary stability, you want a little less so that you can cut and maneuver. Well, if you're talking open water, you're not going to need that. So stability, your Bonafide XTR, your Titan X 12.5, your Hammer, your PA 14. Those kayaks are really made to be able to get out there and feel comfortable.
Yeah, and then let's go right into. So you're talking about like primary stability is kind of that stability you have kind of at rest, and when you're talking about secondary stability and moving in water, that's like a little bit more ability to kind of roll a little bit and bank into turns. So just that's kind of what we're talking about. But I think the
Right.
next biggest thing would be your hull design and the length, because people sometimes will maybe think like shorter kayaks are easier to maneuver, but that's not always the case in bigger water. And when you're taking on waves, you're going to want a little bit longer of a kayak, right?
Absolutely. I tell everybody all the time, it's like the old school surfboards, super long. And that was so that you can manipulate waves. And, when you start talking about even like a Old Town Sportsman 106 versus a Big Water 132 or an Autopilot 136, your biggest difference is there isn't going to be the stability side to side. It's that kayak dipping in and out of waves. So if you get a longer kayak, it's going to cut water better, and you're not going to be doing as much of that. So yeah, length in big water is considerably more important. we're, I don't know if it's lucky or not, but we're on Lake of the Ozarks, which is, very, very rough, a lot of big boats here. So we actually need that here as well. A kayak that is longer, cuts water, a little bit faster. And the length gives you that. The BigWater 132 and the E drive on that is really a kayak that's just, it's known for being fast. It's known for cutting water really good. And that's definitely an attribute when it comes to BigWater.
Then I would say the other thing about the hull design too would be more of that V shape or a semi V shape versus if you're going to be on shallower, calmer water like ponds or small lakes, you might have more of those pontoon style hulls that are pretty flat that are going to give you a ton of primary stability, but you probably won't cut through those waves that you mentioned as much. So having more of that traditional V, at least like a knifed front to cut through those waves, like you said too. So longer, and then more of that V style is going to help you on bigger water.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're more like the double pontoon style or some of those type of hulls. They're going to push water,
Yep.
and you need to cut water. So that's where your V hull or semi V is going to cut water a little bit better, and it's going to make it easier. Really all the way around. You're going to stay drier because water is going to kick to the sides instead of just pushing straight through. And a hull design is very important when you start talking about ocean, and especially when you start talking about current, things like that. You're going to need a faster boat. So that's where some of those V hulls are the way to go.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into another one that I had marked down here to talk about too, was the tracking and the speed. And I learned this even when I first started, as like, oh man, a shorter kayak is going to be easier to maneuver and it'll hold its line. And it's one of those things I learned right away that actually a shorter compact kayak, like I did not, you would go offline. The tracking and the speed was actually, I found some of the longer ones I've got in that are in that 11.5 feet and longer actually track better. They actually, like you said, cut water. So they're faster too.
Yeah, and when you're talking about bigger water, I mean that's important. I mean, I know I've had a guy that I deal with in Hawaii quite a bit, and they're very cognizant of the speed of a kayak because it's got to be faster than current, or they're just going to get pulled out. And next thing you know, they're calling Coast Guard. And so it's very important for them that the pedal drive or the motor, or paddling, but they always make sure they have two forms of propulsion. That they are quick so that they're not battling just trying to keep up with current, but they can beat current and get back.
Yeah, and you mentioned too that, pontoon, you're pushing water versus the V where you're cutting water too, and that goes into like the tracking speed, but also efficiency. I mean, you're going to be covering so much more water in open water and have to paddle longer distances, pedal longer distances, even your motors. You're going to burn up your batteries if you're pushing water rather than cutting water. So it's kind of like you're going to hear a theme from us that all these attributes matter, and they kind of tie in.
And I think some things that we think about in the kayak world a little too much sometimes is speed when it comes to like the motors and things like that. I think that when we talk about the difference in speed, it may be a half mile an hour.
Yep.
But it's a big deal when you're going 4 miles. It's going to save your battery, it's going to save your legs, it's going to save your arms. So being cognizant of what's going on in the water that you're going to, which goes back to skill level. It's important to have a kayak that's going to work with you, not against you. And that's just like this is why we're doing this podcast, because it really just depends on the kayak you choose.
Yep. And then I think the next thing that kind of goes into it is weight capacities, which this all seems like, a little redundant, but weight capacities tend to go up because we're talking about kayaks that are longer, a little bit wider, and just have higher weight capacities. But it is important to consider because you might need a motor to put on it. You might need more safety gear and other things like when you're going longer distances, more food, water, all that stuff. So, pay attention to your weight capacities too, because you're going to need more gear getting on big water.
Yeah. And also considering like what type of fishing you're doing. Like, are you, if you're right at capacity, fairly close to capacity, but then you're fishing for tuna, if you end up having 50 or 100 extra pounds in the boat when you're hauling it back, that's not safe. So you just need to make sure that the boat is going to perform, when you leave the beach and when you're coming back, so,
Yeah.
just being on top of that is super important, and knowing what your manufacturer, how they get those numbers, because I know that's another thing in the industry that's not super regulated. So some people may be, they may give that capacity based on a fully loaded boat. They may have the seat and the drive included in that. They may not. So just making sure that you're going through the manufacturer specs and making sure that you're good.
Yep. That's another thing we talk about every episode is the weight capacity and how they get it. Some are really good about giving you the boat's total capacity, and then they'll give you the usable capacity. The easy way to do it is if you don't have the usable capacities, you can subtract the weight of the kayak itself from whatever it says its total capacity is, and that'll give you a general idea. And you can push it too, because I know, like, I saw a funny picture of the new Unlimited Max. They kept, they were standing holding on to a boat. I saw a video from on New Canoe, and they kept putting guys in there, and I think they ended up having six guys in there. It's like, and it was still floating. So like the weight capacities are way up there. I think what you need to pay attention to, you mentioned it, is once you get past that weight capacity, a tiny little wave could roll you. You just totally lose the safety of your boat, which is so important on open water. So if you're pushing your capacity, like you said, you catch a tuna and you're bringing that back, and you catch a wave when you're not looking the right way, you're going to get dumped if you're pushing it.
Yeah. And even if it's not a catastrophe, it could be just uncomfortable all day. If you're pushing the capacity, you may be standing in water all day long because water's coming up through your scuppers. And you can put, scupper plugs in and that, but you're still pushing it. I have a guy that does big, like 10-day trips, and he uses an unlimited, and he has sent me pictures where he had 1,200 pounds in it. And it works for him, and he understands his bodies of water. If he rolls, all he's got to do is stand up because he's in Missouri rivers, and he's staying in fairly shallows. So you can push those things. Offshore is where we start talking about not pushing things. That's where, like I said, if he rolls his kayak over, all he's got to do is stand up, collect his stuff. You do that out in open water, and you're in trouble.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point too, because I was actually I had that on my list too, was the fact of using scuppers, having a kayak with good drainage too. Just when you're cutting through them waves, we've all seen the videos. You're getting giant rollers coming over. If they go into your kayak, you're going to get wet when you do offshore fishing or big water fishing. But if you have good drainage, like that's what your scuppers are for, is to quickly drain all that water so you don't take on that weight. So when you're starting to talk
develop your way of doing it. I have a guy who he only puts his scupper plugs in on the front, and he does that because he still gets his drainage. But when those rollers hit the front of his kayak, it's not spitting water at him all the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you're doing big waves, that'll happen. When that wave's cresting the hull of the boat, it's spitting water through the scupper plugs. So he runs it in the front. He's just done it enough that he knows what he needs to do to make his boat perform the best for him. And I think that's what you need to do on any kayak, is really just make sure that you're going through that kayak, doing some test runs before you get where you can't see the shore, and make sure it's just going to be safe.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never even thought about the water hitting a wave big enough to have the water spit through the front. I haven't experienced
even when
that
people
yet.
think that that's not that big a deal, being wet all day sucks. So, things like that are things that you can just fine tune your rig to match the body of water or the skill level that you have, and make sure it performs, at its best.
And you mentioned it. Let's just jump right into it. The things to consider for like safety. An easy one is making sure your kayak is visible, whether that's with flags, or if you're going to be a primarily offshore, maybe you pick a kayak that's a brighter color too, and just easier to see. Those are the easy ones. But I think another one for me would be having a way to communicate, whether that's a satellite radio or long distance walkie-talkies. That's another thing I would consider for bigger trips like that. You need a way to contact shore if you get into trouble. But what would be another safety tip you'd have for bigger water?
So the first safety tip, and this is because I'm not an offshore guy. I want to be, but I'm not, and I haven't done it much. But the first thing I would recommend to anyone is to get on the Coast Guard's website and find out what they recommend that you have. We don't have to have a flare on the lake,
Yeah,
but you may where you're at. So look and see what the Coast Guard says. You may have to have a whistle. You may have to have a horn. You may have to have there's whatever municipality or whatever governing body tells you what the safety regulations are. Definitely follow it and go through and like a flare. A flare may be something you're supposed to have in the offshore. I think it'd be very handy if you got out there. But another thing to think about, and my Hawaii guy makes me really consider this a lot, is if you're going considerably out offshore, I would always try to have two forms of propulsion, whether that be a pedal drive and a motor, a pedal drive and paddle, whatever it is. But you don't want to get yourself out there, or these guys that run motors and then don't even take a paddle with them, or that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, I would make sure, that you have an extra battery, or at very least, if you're running a motor, that you have a pedal drive, or you have, or that it's a paddleable boat, so that you can make sure that you're not just depending everything on one way.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That's crazy that you would go out with just, because batteries fail, electronics fail. Yeah, always, again, going back to like tying all your gear down, you should take into every trip, like something is going to go wrong, so you're covered. But I like that idea of checking the Coast Guard's website. That's super smart. Yep. And the other,
and a first aid kit. I know when I've fished offshore, those fish are, the spines are different. The hook sets are different. You're using bigger tackle a lot of times, and you get a treble hook in your finger out in the middle of nowhere. You need to make sure that you have everything that you need. And of course, the basics are even more important when you're offshore. If you don't take water and hydrate, if you don't take, things like that, you were spot on in the beginning, making sure that you're packing the right amount of food, the sunscreen, making sure that when you get out there, you're not putting yourself in a bad situation, because it's not like the river where you just kick off to the side and jump on the bank, or a lake or a big pond where, you always can see the sides and see the shore. You get offshore and you start to dehydrate, you're going to be in trouble. So I think the pre-planning portion of kayaking is considerably more important when you're going offshore.
Yeah. And the biggest one, we haven't even mentioned it, but it's I know it's our podcast, non-negotiable life jacket. I just saw a video came across in my algorithm. It was a guy, I don't know, it was offshore fishing, it was kayak fishing, and it was two kayaks next to each other. They kept passing the pole back and forth because they had hooked into a shark. Neither person was wearing a life jacket or any sun protect, and it just blew my mind. It's like, you are battling a shark, and according to their caption, it was 4 miles offshore, and you're battling a shark and you don't have a life jacket on. And it just, it's like, the video was meant to be like, hey, this is really cool, this is kind of epic. And the only thing I could focus on as a kayak angler, and obviously somebody who does this podcast with you, was, wow, that person's not wearing a life jacket. That's really dumb.
We talk about them all the time. When you need your life jacket, if you're not wearing it, it's too late. So just wear it. I'm a firm believer. I wasn't, and then I started. The way these life jackets are now, they're fairly sleek, and then also with some of them that are out there, you can really turn it into part of your tackle. Set it up to where you've got things where you need them and can get to them. That's what helped me to wear it all the time, because now it's functionally part of my trip. Yep. And so there's things you can do to kind of train yourself to get better at that. But yeah, I watched one the other day where a guy in a kayak hooked up with a shark. It started taking him out. He had no knife, so he had no way to cut the line. Well, he's using crazy heavy line. You just ain't gonna bite it off like we do, right. So he's fighting that fish, and he's trying how to get rid of it. He's trying to figure out how to get rid of that, how to cut it off, but he's searching all over. So that's where I say pack things that you need. In the river, I'm a minimalist. I'm always
100%.
saying, man, I wish I'd have brought that, but I didn't need it. I didn't want it because I want to be a minimalist. That's not what I'll be in offshore. I'll have everything I need, probably extra, just because there's just nobody to help you out there if you get in a problem.
We kind of went over the attributes we think are important and some of the safety features. I think maybe we do talk about a few kayaks that you would
Yeah,
recommend personally, but I'll give the disclaimer that we kind of said in the beginning of this. We're going to kind of just give a few. We won't go super in depth. I'll share more details in the comments and the description, but keep in mind, it's all about ability level. These kayaks we're going to talk about are what we would maybe consider starting points for your search, but it really is whatever you feel safe and comfortable in with your skill level. So this isn't an
right,
exclusive list.
right. I would say one that has just came out that really shows a lot of promise, and that I'm excited to get out on, and that is the new Crescent Crescraft. Um, it leans towards the micro skiff side. That's what it is. But that's one of those boats that is going to be great offshore, but then also gives you the ability to go inshore, like red fishing and things like that. It gives you the ability to get on, to get in those flats as well. But that is another very buildable kayak. You can put a gas motor on it. You can put, which, that's not something that we think about a whole lot, gas motors, because it's not something you would do. But on the ocean, that would be a pretty good thing to have. I mean, because it's going to push you considerably faster. And it's just a very, very solid boat, very stable. It's a big boat. And I think it would perform very well offshore.
Yeah, I just pulled it up after struggling a little bit. I got there.
No,
But
you're
yeah,
good.
this one's 13 feet 6 inches, 39 inches wide. So it's kind of talking about some of that stuff. With a capacity of 500 pounds, you got the ability to kind of add a second person if you want to the front. But then I don't know, on bigger water, that might get a little more dicey with boat control. I don't know how much you recommend tandem fishing on that. So it might be more. But if you were doing inshore fishing, then you could switch it up to do 2 people. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
and it's
cool one.
nice
And
because it has your modified V. So it's going to be a V hull, but then it's still very flat when it goes back to the mid and rear of that kayak. So that allows you to basically cut the water that you need to cut, but also be able to get into those flats and go in some very skinny water too. So if you're looking for a boat that could kind of do both, I would say that would be a good choice.
yeah, and the one thing I'll say that sets this apart from most other fishing kayaks is the fact that it can handle a true outboard gas motor. So this might be one of the few where you can actually get a motor and get close. I don't know. I'd have to see it on the water. I haven't seen it yet, but it might actually get on plane. So you might be able to scoot around a little faster in this one too, just because you can
Yeah,
add that big of a motor to it.
for sure. It's a great kayak for not only performance, but the riggability, or the ability to build it the way you want it. I mean, you can throw an NK 300 on it and get where you need to go, or you can throw a Honda on it
Yeah.
and turn it into whatever you want. But I know a lot of offshore, if you're a guy that wants to go out 10, 12 miles, gas is going to probably be what you're going to do. And this kayak allows you the ability to do that.
All right. Do you have another suggestion I can throw
I'll
out
tell you
there?
another one that I think is really good, and both on performance and safety. And that would be the Sportsman ePDL. The beauty of that is you have your 2 forms of propulsion built into one system.
You talking
So
the BigWater
yeah,
version
the
for
BigWater
this one? Yeah.
132, the ePDL version. And the Sportsman as well would be, or the Sportsman 120 Pro PDL would be okay. It's not going to perform as good as the 132. The 132 is that whole design, the original Predator, now BigWater. That whole design is very fast. It cuts water very good. And I really like the ePDL portion of that, because you can use the pedal, get where you need to go, use the motor to help you get home, or vice versa, however you want to use it. But having the ability to get some help is pretty huge on that. But then if you do run out of battery, you still got your pedal and your paddle, and that boat actually gives you the most safety as far as knowing that you're gonna, one of those forms of propulsion is going to work.
Yeah. This is so I'll shout out back to the beginning when I talked about my inexperience and when I went from a shorter kayak into a longer kayak and couldn't believe the difference in like how much easier it was to control. The Big Water 132, not the ePDL version, but just the normal pedal version, was the kayak I used as an example. When I finally got a chance to hop in that, I couldn't believe how much easier, despite being a 13+ foot kayak, how well that thing cut through the water. It was the easiest paddle or pedal one I had done. Like that's a personally speaking, that was a really fun kayak to give a try. That thing handles so well and was so comfortable.
Yeah, when they came out with that, it won ICAST Boat of the Year. It's a great kayak. That's just the normal 132 PDL, and it's super fast. It's made to cut water, and it does its job. It's just a really good kayak for that. And I think that Old Town has hit it spot on their gear ratios. So a lot of people don't really think of that through, but you take 2 kicks on that pedal drive and that thing's gone. I mean, it takes off. And I think that's just a very well-designed boat for offshore stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it is named the Big Water.
Yeah. And also cuts, kill, bob up and down, horribly. It's got a great steering and rudder system.
Yep.
And you can load it up the way you want to load it. And that boat would be one that if I was worried about safety, that'd be a good one.
Any other quick recommendations?
Yeah, I'd say the PA-14. I know Hobie's getting ready to make a comeback, and we're excited to see boats coming. But the PA-14's always been a really good boat for that. And one reason why we kind of pivoted is because the Outback. There's a lot of guys that take the Outback on the ocean. It wouldn't be my choice, but if you have the skill level, it's doable. But the PA-14, I think, is one that's really designed really well and could really help you out in big water. Very stable. And that drive system, it's a very good drive system. The fin drive's super efficient. And you have plenty of ability to motorize that kayak as well. And it should handle anything you want to throw at it.
Yeah, that's a kayak. That's another one too. I got to try Jonathan's when I came down when I first started with you guys, and it was just so big. It's so wide, so long. There's so much room in there, like more than enough room for any amount of gear that you want to take. But what really surprised me again with that was how well it moved through the water with the fin drives and how easily it turned and was easy to handle. I mean, you'll probably come across a lot of videos on social media and you will see that. I mean, even their photos here that they supply for the website and stuff are all ocean fishing. So when you come across the video, you're probably going to see quite a bit of PA-14s as the
and Hobie's. I mean, Hobie's on all the coasts, and a ton of Hobies in Hawaii, and it's just because they perform well. I mean, it's just that boat is really made well for the kind of fishing that you do offshore.
Yep.
And this, I don't have a lot of experience in this yet, but I think another one that is going to be really good for the ocean would be the new Canoe U-Max. That kayak is really made to build, super easy to put a motor on. And you could build that one out to perform offshore super easy.
This is more of your open platform kind of kayak. If anyone knows about New Canoe, they're really, really well designed, but they are designed for you to build them out however you want. So they've got tons of different accessories to build it out for river fishing, lake fishing, pond fish, like whatever it needs to be. So
I tell people all the time, we sell fishing kayaks and New Canoe, because New Canoe, in my opinion, is more of a sportsman's kayak, because you can take that U-Max out and fish for grouper one day, and the next day you can go turn it into a duck blind, and they have shotgun mounts and blinds for it. I mean, that is an open platform. I love it. I think it's very cool the way you can build it the way you want it, and New Canoe, you can really use one kayak for everything, and I like the ability to do that.
Yeah, and this one, we talked about the ePDL has the built-in drive for pedaling, and then the ability to kick on the motor for cruise control. So you've got a couple of propulsions. I would say with the unlimited, you're probably almost certainly looking at adding a motor. It would be difficult to paddle. I think you're able to paddle, say you're floating on a river or in a smaller pond. I think you could get away with paddling it, but you would not probably be able to paddle this in open big water on its own safely.
Right. I
in
mean,
my
when they put a
opinion.
battery box in it, it's because they expect that you're going to put a
Yep.
battery in it. So I think it's designed for that. If it were me, I would have probably an NK300 on the back, and I would probably have a Minn Kota Trover on the front. So I had one thing that's made for propulsion, just getting you where you need to go. Another motor that is made for fishability. But if your stern mount battery goes dead, or if you have problems with that, you have another form. You could let that Tarova pull you home. So yeah, just definitely building it the way you need it to be to perform the best in your body of water.
All right. Any other ones, Travis, before we send people down?
No, I think that's it. I think that probably the biggest thing is that you're going to hear from JT and I and Eco is safety's got to be first.
Yep.
Safety first. Your PFD, what you're taking with you, all of those things that JT and I talked about. It's just the consequences are a lot worse when you're out offshore. So doing your research, making sure that the boat is set up the way it needs to be set up, making sure you have all the safety things that you need in the boat. It's going to make it so that you have the best trip possible and get home safe.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate it, Travis. What I'll tell everyone, what I'm so bad about is obviously like and subscribe. It does help us. But more importantly, even than that, is if you come away with this with questions, I'll throw up on the screen here the shop number, our customer service number at Eco Fishing Shop, and check the description for the shop phone number to give you a call. I think what we always want to do, and then my email too, is like we are more than willing to walk people through with really specific questions. We want to get people in the kayaks, like you said, that are going to keep them the safest and like it just make them the most happy on the water. So yeah, drop us a comment, shoot us a call. Otherwise, stay safe on the water. Thanks, Travis.
Absolutely. Stay safe, guys.